Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The rising American prospect Jared Anderson, 22 years old, returns on the undercard of the pay-per-view portion of the Fury Wilder 3 pay-per-view. So that fight, as well as the one featuring Viktor Vykhryst, which is the 5th heavyweight fight on the overall card, that's what I'll be discussing in this video. So Vykhyrst, he is fighting a guy in Mike Marshall, and Jared Anderson, he is facing Vladimir Tereshkin. So Tereshkin, an unbeaten Russian, 22-0-1. But let's face it, so Jared Anderson, he's going to be the first heavyweight fight on the pay-per-view portion of the card. That is 4 fights on the card, so Anderson Tereshkin opens it up. This is a showcase fight. Make no mistake about it, it's a showcase fight. Jared Anderson, 22 years old, 8-0. He is the sort of pride of the top rank sort of prospects coming through. He separated himself from the likes of Sonny Konto, for example, who turned pro roughly at about the same time. It looks like Top Rank have a lot of eggs in the Jared Anderson basket. So this is a showcase fight to give him some more exposure to a broader audience, because theoretically there will be hundreds of thousands of people buying this pay-per-view. So if Anderson can get in front of those people who are not really familiar with him at the moment, score a good knockout and a commanding performance, it's going to be very good for his stock. And we'll go to the weigh-in first, because Anderson, 240 pounds on the scale. And for him, that's actually a good weight. So in the past year or so, he's been bulking up and getting heavier and heavier. For Rodney Hernandez, he was 247, 246 for Luis Pena, Kingsley eBay, 249, 251 for Jeremiah Carpensi. And I was saying, this is going in the wrong direction. He needs to be more around 240, because that's, for a guy who's roughly, 6'4", that is a more ideal fighting weight, and where he's looked good before. When he turned pro, he was 233, but as a young guy, we know he's going to get bigger over time, just sort of fill out a bit, but 240 feels like a good weight for him. This is where he's hit for this fight. So clearly motivated and put in the hard yards in training, and he's got some really good rounds under his belt in this training camp. So he sparred with Tyson Fury. I mean, obviously, this fight was postponed along with the main event, so all these guys who were working together, like F.A. Ajagba, who's on the card, he's been sparring with Jared Anderson on multiple occasions. Tyson Fury, the same thing. He's had some work with Bryant Jennings as well. So he's had some good rounds, and at the press conference this week, he spoke about some of that, saying that my confidence is always through the roof. The great sparring I get with Tyson Fury helps because he supports me and gives me pointers. It's nice to be prepared like that before I actually step in there. It means a lot that Fury is supporting me, and Fury has said that he believes Jared Anderson is the sort of heir apparent to the heavyweight division once he's retired. He continues saying, it lets everyone know that I'm a name to be reckoned with and that everyone has to look out for me. My level of competition is continuing to grow. Tyson said that I'm a totally different fighter from the last camp he worked with me. We're just working on being the best that I can be. I don't think I have anything to prove because I have nothing to lose. That's what makes me an incredibly dangerous opponent. Make sure you tune in, because we're going to war for sure. Not so sure that this is going to be a war, and if it is, it might sort of resemble a one-sided war, because I think Jared Anderson is going to roll through Vladimir Tereshkin. So Tereshkin, a Russian who's basically fought in multiple locations around the world. We're talking Jamaica, Latvia, also in Moscow, Ukraine, United States, Finland, all over the place, Germany as well. He's got a good-looking record in terms of on paper, but in terms of the actual names on that record, it's pretty thin. There's really nothing there. It's a pretty record, but he's going to get broken down, blasted away here. Let's not mince words. This is a showcase fight. It's going to end in a knockout, and Tereshkin is going to be brutally separated from his senses. And he just said at the press conference, because I've gone back and watched it all, ahead of doing this video, really just sort of appeared happy to be there. He didn't really say too much, just said, I'm very ready to fight on this huge event. I'm happy, and I know a lot about my opponent. I've done great preparation, and we're going to win. My opponent is a strong fighter, but I'm prepared as well as I ever have been. He's going to have to be ready for what I bring in the ring, just like I'm going to be. But it sort of had that sort of, going through the motion type sort of, making those statements. He didn't really seem to be super confident in the way that he was, saying all this. It just, you gave off that vibe that it's a big event. He was happy to be part of it. But let's face it, what's going to happen is he's going to take that first L. Jared Anderson, to the uninitiated, will be a guy that'll be like, wow, that guy looked fantastic. That was a really good win. I'm looking forward to seeing more of this guy in the future. So it's designed to get more eyeballs on him, a showcase, and make sure that people start to know who this guy is. 22 years old, on the way up, 9-0, and will be 10-0 after this fight. Also, Viktor Vykhyrst. I only found out that he was on this card at the start of fight week, and I thought, well, that's a little bit random. So he is going to be on the portion of this card. So there's actually 3 different broadcast segments here. So you got the pay-per-view card, which everyone has to pay for. Then you've got on ESPN2 and ESPN Plus, that is going to be Edgar Berlanga versus Caceres. You've got Julian Williams versus Vladimir Hernandez. But prior to that, on the ESPN app at 4:50 p.m., you've got 3 fights. Robisi Ramirez, that's the Olympian, Bruce Carrington as well, and Viktor Vykhryst, they're still pushing this whole thing of Viktor Faust. So Faust is not his last name, but Faust is a name that they've given him in Germany. But his real name is Viktor Vykhyrst, and he is from the Ukraine, but he has been promoted and fighting in Germany at this point. So he is fighting Mike Marshall. So I don't know how this has come about. It's all a little bit random. But Mike Marshall is a guy who's eaten his way up from 180 pounds when he first turned pro. This is quite a number of years ago now. He got knocked out in 2016, was inactive, retired, whatever the case may be, for 4 years, and made a comeback in late 2020. So he's 242 pounds for Viktor Faust, who was 233 pounds. And that's about there or thereabouts where Viktor Vykhyrst has been weighing in at. So Vykhyrst was a good amateur. He's 7-0 as a pro at the moment. He's coming off actually a rather embarrassing win. It was against a guy who was like 46, 47 years old, Jacek Krzysztof Pierczek. And it was an embarrassing sort of first round knockout. I don't even know how that got sanctioned, why it got made. It was ridiculous. But he has fought before the likes of Jakub Saglam. Joseph Parker fans may remember that name on the way up. Also Kamil Sokolowski, basically, who has fought a who's who of British and European sort of talent in recent years. So Vykhyrst easily outboxed Sokolowski, sort of showed he was a cut above where Sokolowski was fighting at. And he's going to do the same here. So not a massive power puncher, so he's got 7 wins with 5 KOs. But yeah, he's not a huge puncher. But Mike Marshall's been stopped at a lower level when he was fighting at 180 pounds, or what was it, against a guy called Luther Smith back in 2016. And Smith was a journeyman. So yeah, that was a first round knockout. So maybe this is the same, that it's all being teed up to give Viktor Vykhyrst a knockout win on a bigger platform. He has been rather sort of toiling away in obscurity in Europe at this point. A lot of heavyweight fans are not really familiar with Viktor Vykhyrst to any real extent. He's a good boxer, doesn't have good pop, but his skills will take him some way in the heavyweight division. But he sort of falls into that sort of 3rd or 4th tier of heavyweights at the moment. He's not in the top 20, not even in the top 30, but he could sort of make his way there in the next year or two. And 29 years old, needs to get a bit of a move on now. But what did you make of it all? Viktor Vykhyrst returning, as is Jared Anderson, both surely to get wins here. It'd be a shock if they don't. Drop a comment loud enough and hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.